Today we will study the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 8. Yesterday we talked about chapter 7.
昨天讲了第7章。
第7章係神應許大衛家。
It's about God's promise to David's house. God will surely establish God's house and his kingdom forever. Because David is after God's heart. So there's a big difference between Saul and David. Both of them are being chosen by God. Saul's heart contained the people, the cattle, and the sheep. He's fearful. He needed the people to support him. So he highly regards the good sheep and cattle. That's why when he faced every decision, he embraced his people fearfully. His heart is not to follow God. But David, his heart has God. When facing all the difficulties, even being pursued, wherever he went, in any circumstances, even to the last minute, he grabbed hold of God. He's after God. This is a good reminder to all of us. Are you after God or you are after the world? One is W, the other is G. World. W is the world, wealth. G is God. G-O-D for God. Go after God. We must learn from David following God. Yesterday, this chapter talked about God's promise to David. God said, David, you are after my heart. You wanted to build a temple for me. At the beginning, God said no. So I'm not so used to living in a big house. I've never been living in a big house since Exodus, that I've been walking among you throughout the tabernacles or the tent. No need. But later, God promised David. God could see the heart of David. He knows that God has to dwell among them all the time or forever. God's promise to David, I will surely establish your house and kingdom. This is very important. And God said, okay, you don't need to build a temple for me, but your son will build it for me. Thereafter, God blessed his descendants, sons and descendants. And even your sons and descendants sin against me, I will strike them. But I will continue to build them up. So it's to lead the people of David. Think about when the nation has fallen, what is the reflection, what is the reminder to them? But still there is hope. Because God promised David, I will surely build up the house of David and his kingdom forever. So this is the climax we talked about yesterday. Today we study chapter 8. Chapter 8 is a conclusion. God promised David to establish the house of David forever.
就係講大衛嘅武功，
So in this conclusion here, talked about the power
还有他的治理。
and the ministration of
我哋睇
David.
8章好容易分為呢兩段，1到14節，15到
When we
18
look at chapter 8, it's easy for us
段
to
是1到14节，然后
separate it
15
into 2
到
two
18
佢
paragraphs.
嘅武功去征服咗邊
Talk
啲
about his power and what are the enemies, who are the people that he has defeated, and how internally he administered the
所以我哋讀
people.
中國歷史咧就係話文字武功啦，係咪啊？
That's why when we read the Chinese history, we talk about the words and also the power. In Chinese, we call 功夫.
一個嘅總結。
这是他文治还有武功
So
的一个总
here is
结
the。
但我哋讀聖經
conclusion
唔
in
係
this
單止知道
chapter.
大衛佢嘅武功如何，佢嘅文字如何。
但我们读
So
圣
when
经不
we
是只
read
单单只
this
知道
chapter,
大
we
卫的文
don't
治跟武
just
功如何
read his
我哋睇佢呢個
words or
文
his
功
power
背後
and his 功夫,
點解會咁？
and we
你要
have
看
to
他的
read
文治武
behind
功背
these
后为
words.
什么会这样？
Why is
呢
it
個
like
真
that?
理要同我哋講。
So what is
這個
this
真理要跟我們
truth
說些什麼？
speaking to us?
表面上係記載大衛啊，去征服咗
Like
邊啲
on
佢
on the
嘅
appearance,
官員有邊
it's
啲。
telling
表
us
面上是
which
他
are
大
the
衛征服了哪里，他的
territories,
官
who
员
are the
有哪
people
些。
that he had
其實我
defeated.
哋要從呢個當中睇到神應承咗大衛係永遠要堅
So
立佢嘅家
by
庭。
winning all these
那從這裡
battles,
我
we
們
can
看見
see
神應
that
許大
God's
衛會
promise
永遠
to
建立他的
establish
家
his
和
house
國
and his kingdom forever has come to
係嗰
pass.
啲後來有亡國喎，
But later, the nations
即
followed.
係以色列人有亡國被擄
The
喎。
Israelites went into
以色列人
exile
有王國，
afterwards,
經過佢哋嘅反省。
and then they
他們反省。
reflected on
究
themselves.
竟呢個記載來對佢哋有乜嘢提
So
醒
by
呢？
究竟
recording
這個記載對
the
他們來
things
說
happen
是
in
什麼
this chapter,
亡國嘅
what
以色列人
is it to the
記
Israelites?
載大衛嘅文字武功
So
記載
by
大衛的文字
looking
跟
at the
武功
words of David and how powerful he
要表
is,
達啲乜嘢？
what is
就要
God
知道
trying to
表達些什麼。
express through this chapter?
呢個就係嗰個歷史嘅教訓。
So
這
this
是他們歷
is
史的教
the,
訓，
their reflection, the lesson that they need to learn from history,
給他們的
and
教訓也是
also
給我們
for us
今
to
天的
learn
提
and
醒。
reminder
我就
for
鋪好
us.
我講第8章嘅路啦。
我就已經鋪好我給第八
Okay,
章的
this is
路
the like background for chapter 8.
我俾呢章聖經嘅標題呢
Topic for
給這
this
章聖經
chapter
的標
is
題，
都好唔容易。
Oh, it's
因為
never
好長
easy.
很不
It
容易，
seems to
因為
be
很
very
長
long.
我現在咧，因為要係上網啦，
那因為現在
Because
要
I
上
need
網
to put this on the website.
呢個講章嘅呢個分享嘅標題咧，就比較唔係我平時主日嗰
So
種
the
嘅標題。
topic
那個標題就
that I
比較不
put in
是
on the
平常
website
在
is
主日
not
我
the
的
same
那
as
種
what I
我
put
會將
in the
係
Sunday
試圖將
service.
嗰個我頭先所講嘅嗰個嘅對佢哋嘅歷史教訓，對我哋所
So
宣
as
講嘅
just
真理
what I
有一個部分
explained,
咧撮要出嚟。
talking
我嘗
about
試將對他
the
們過去
things
歷
they
史的教
they
訓
need
對
to
我們
learn
提
from
醒，嘗
histories
試把它抓
and
摘
how
要出來。
God
但呢
wants
個
to
書
handle
就會
this.
好長啊，
但這個摘要就
So
會
it
很
may be a
長，
little bit
一
long.
句嘅 sentence 嚟嘅。
So
就是一句
is a
sentence。
long sentence.
好，我就咁樣
Okay, let me put it this
先
way.
咁樣講先嚇
我先這樣來說，
盡自己嘅責任，
So
盡自己
do
的責
your
任
best
走在神的祝福中，
走在
to
神的
walk
祝
on
福
God's
中
走在
blessing
神嘅應許
or
中，
或者
to
走
walk
在
on
神的
God's
應許
promises.
中
係對佢哋以色列被擄嘅以色列人，
是對
So
這些
this
被擄的以
is
色列
spoken
民
to the
要
Israelites.
反省
This is
他們要反
something they
省
need
亦
to
都提醒我
reflect.
哋今日，
也提醒
It
我們
is also a
今天
reminder.
神有應許俾我哋，
神有應
God
許
has
給我們
promised for
有好多
us.
嘅應許俾我哋。
聖經裡面
There
有
are a
很多
lot of
應許給
promises
我
in
們
the
神係掌
Bible.
管萬有，
And God
神是
reigns
掌管萬
above
有的。
all.
咁點解呢個世界會咁
And
呢？
why
為
is
什麼
this
這個世界
world
會
like
這樣？
that?
我哋會有艱難呢？
為什麼
Why
會有
do
艱
do we
難
have
呢？
其實我哋
difficulties?
係睇到，我哋喺神嘅應許、喺神嘅祝福入邊，我哋需要負上
We
我
can
哋嘅責
we
任
see that
我們看
under
見
the
我們在神的應
promise
許
of
的祝福
God,
裡面，
the
我們
His
需要負上
blessing,
自己的
we
責
need
任
to
人嘅本分。
do
這是
our
人的
best.
本分。
我哋唔係講天助人自助，唔係咁。
It's
我們
not
不是
that,
講
oh,
天
God
助
will
人
help
自
me
助
or I can help
所以我哋嚟
myself.
講呢，我哋有神嘅揀選，
我們有神的
We
揀
have
選
the choosing from God. We are chosen by
但係我
God.
哋咧都係要擺上我哋人嘅責任。
So we have to take our own
否則嘅話
responsibility.
好似以色列人咁，佢哋都會被擄嘅。
Otherwise, we are just like the Israelites going to
但係神
captivity.
應許咗大衛國度，
But
永遠
God
建立
promised that the kingdom of David be established forever. But why the nation has fallen?
人嘅失責喺嗰度。
Or because some people, this is the people's problem and they
所以我哋
didn't
唔可以
take the
話我哋有
responsibility.
神嘅祝福，我哋就掂啦，就隨便啦。
Or we
我
should
哋
not
有
say
神嘅
that,
祝
oh,
福
I
就
have the
隨
blessing
便。
of God, I can
神
do
嘅
things
責任
freely.
人嘅責任。
So it's people's responsibility, God's choosing, and God's
嘅
blessing,
恩典
God's
神嘅恩
grace,
典
同埋人嘅責任。
and
呢
also
兩
man's
兩個喺我哋
responsibility.
神學上係兩根嘅 pillar 嚟嘅，兩個
So
嘅
this
支
is
柱
two
跟人的責任是在
pillars
神學裡面是
in
兩根支
theology.
柱，
一切所成就嘅，
一切
For
所成就的
everything
其實
that's
都係呢兩根嘅支柱入邊。
其實都在這兩根的支柱裡
everything
面。
that's
譬
accomplished
如我哋睇到
because
有
of these two pillars.
基督係有神性，基督亦都有人性。
We can see that Christ is God, He is also
我
man.
哋講到我哋係信靠住信得救。
So
我
we
哋靠
say
住
that
信得救
we
亦
are
都
saved
要有
by
我哋嘅
faith.
行為。
但我們也要有
But we also need to have
唔可以淨
the
係哎我有
action
行
of
為得救
faith.
唔可以。
It's
不能
not
說
that
我
I
只有
only
信
have
就
a
單單信
behavior
啊
or
單單
we
信
say
心
we,
信
I
心
only
亦都
have
係有
faith.
行為
但信心
By
也是有
faith,
行為的。
係
We also
呢
need
兩個支柱
behavior.
這兩個支柱是很
These
重
two
要的。
pillars are
我哋一方面
important.
講神嘅恩典，
我們一方
On
面
the
講
one
神的
hand,
恩
we
典
say we talk about the grace of
但
God,
我們也不能忽略
but
人
we
的
should
責
not
任。
leave out
呢個
the
係
responsibility of man.
從呢張聖經入邊，我哋都可以睇得到。
從
So
這章
from
聖
this
經裡面我們
chapter,
都可
we
以
can
看得
see
到
it.
佢宣講出嚟嘅真理。
So
這
this
像
is the
宣講出來的
truth
真理。
proclaimed in this
只有
chapter.
只有盡自
So
己的
we
責
have to
任，
do our own responsibility.
走在神的應許
Walking
當
on
中
the promise of
應該
God.
咁樣落去，
大衛的家應該
So
這樣
David's
下
house
去，
should
就
go
永
this
遠
way.
得勝，永遠
That
長
he
他
would
就永遠得勝，
have
永
won
遠
all
長
the
壽。
battles and last forever.
縱
If
然喺
not,
神嘅應許
even
當
though
縱然
we
在
are
神
in
的
the
應
promise
許
of
當
God,
中，
佢都會亡國，
他都會
the
亡國。
nation
但係神
will
仍然
fall.
繼續有慈愛。
But God
神的繼續
continue
有
with His
慈愛。
我
kindness.
哋嚟睇下，咁大衛咧，佢點樣去喺佢自己嗰個年代咧，佢盡佢嘅責任，佢走喺神嘅祝福入邊，喺神嘅應許當中咧。
那大
So
衛怎麼樣
how
在那個年代
David
盡
in
他的
that
責任，走在神的
generation
應許跟
walked
祝福當
into
中呢？
God's promise and
8
blessings by
章
fulfilling
8
His
章是一個總
responsibility.
結。
So chapter 8 is
1
the
到14
conclusion.
節啦。
1到
Verse
14
1
節
to
第一咧，
14.
我哋睇到神性嗰一方面，
第一個我們
So
看
we
見
can
神聖的那
see
方面。
我
the
嘅標題係
attributes of
神使
God.
大衛處處得勝。
The
我的
subtitle
標題
here
是
is
神使大衛
God
處
made
處得勝。
David win every battle,
第一到第
be
二節啦。
第
victorious,
1到第2節。
victorious, victory upon
之後
victory.
大衛攻打非利士人，把他們
Verse
制服，
1.
奪咗佢哋京城嘅權柄。
此後大衛攻打
In the
非利
course
士
of
人，
time,
把他們
David
制服，奪
defeated
了
the
京城的權
Philistines
柄
and subdued
又
them.
攻打摩押人，使他們躺卧
And
在
he
地上，
took
用繩
Medagamma
量
from the
量二
control
繩
of the
的殺了兩
Philistines.
一繩的全民。
David also defeated the Moabites. He made them lie down on the ground and measured them off with a length of cord. Every 2 lengths of them were put to death, and the 3rd length was allowed to live. So the Moabites became subject to David and brought him tribute.
是非利
Talk
士人
about the
跟摩押人
Philistines and
係
Moabites.
嚟嘅人，從海上邊去到迦南嘅人。
The Philistines, they are coming from the sea to the land of Canaan.
而摩押人咧
And for the Moabites,
係羅德嘅後代。
they
而
are
摩
the
押人就是
descendants of
羅德
Lot.
的後代，
一個咧在東，一個在西。
One
一個
is
在東邊，
from
一個
the
在
east
西
and
邊。
one from the west.
以色列啦
在
嘅土地入邊。
So in the land of
在以色列的
Israel,
土地裡面，
非利士人其實今日我哋睇到咧係哈馬斯嘅所根據地。
so
非利士
Philistines,
人呢，
the
嗰個
land
地
is
方啊
是看見是
the place of
哈馬
Hamas
斯的根據地，
nowadays.
是
今日嚟
西岸，
講係西岸。
是
So
今
it's
天來說的西
called
岸。
talk about refer to the western side.
佔有嗰個土地咧，其實今日以色列嘅西岸啊。
以前非
So
利士
the
人所佔有的
place
土地
where
是
the
以
people
色列的
capture in the
西岸。
我哋講
Philistines
西岸嘅時候咧，
area
就好容
is
易
from the
以為
west,
咧就係
west of
諗到其他
Israel.
地方。
那我們講西岸的時候，很
When
容
we
易想到
say
其他的
the
地方。
west, from the west, we
其實
think
就
of
係
other
嗰個加薩
places.
走廊嘅嗰
So
嗰
it's
個
the
地方
corridor
就
of
是加薩
Gaza.
走廊的那個地方。
佢大衛咧係得到嗰個地方。
David captured
得
that
着那個地
place.
方。
非利士人一路都係佢哋嘅以色列人嘅死敵嚟
The
嘅。
Philistines has always been the enemy of Israel. But now David defeated
攞
them
咗佢哋京城嘅權柄，
and also taken over the capital
又係征服咗摩押人。
and subdued Moabites.
所以一摩押咧喺東邊嘅，
Moab
在
is
東
from
邊
the east,
係
is in the east.
非利士人喺以色列嘅西邊 嘅邊境嗰度。
那非利士
The
人在
Philistines
以
is
色
in the
列民
west
西边
side
的
of
边
the
境的，
即係話現
Israelites.
在咧，大衛都攞咗非利士嘅地啦。
就是意思是
That
說
is to
大衛
say,
也拿
David
了
has
非利士地
taken over the place of the
即係佢嘅版
Philistines.
圖咧擴展埋非利
So
士。
David
就是他的版圖
expanded
呢，
his
已經擴
territory
展到非利
towards
士
the
地。
Philistines' land.
第3節至到第8節咧，
Verse
3到第8
3
節
to 8
係講北面嘅，
是
talk
講
about
北
the
邊
northern
係
Israel,
即係亞蘭啦。
亞
Aram.
蘭
所巴王嘅兒子利哈合的兒子咧，所巴王利合的兒子哈大底謝。
所巴
Verse
王
3,
利合
David
的兒
also
子哈大
defeated
底謝
Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of
所巴
Soba.
所巴咧就係攞翻佢嘅國喎，
所巴就
So
拿
he
回了他的
has-
佢
國
要奪回他的國權。
So he wanted to take over
大衛
his
就
own
攻打
power.
他
即係大衛
The king of
去攻打
Soba
所巴，
大衛去
wanted
攻
to
打
take
所
over
巴
his territory,
其實
and
所巴係亞蘭
David
嘅一部分
defeated
其
them.
實所巴是亞蘭的一部分。
Sober is a part of Aram.
即係分開幾個王。
那時候
That
亞蘭還
time,
分開有幾個
Aram,
王
they have
其實
several
呢個
kings.
所巴係其中之一。
King Sober is one of the kings.
大衛咧就係捉咗佢嘅馬兵1700。
Verse 4, David captured 1,000 of
大衛
his
就抓了他的馬兵
chariots, 7,000
1700然後他步
chariotees,
兵200
and 20,000 foot soldiers. He
他
hamstrung
戰車的
all
馬砍
but
斷
100 of the chariot
留
horses.
下100輛車的馬。
就冇全部將佢啲馬咧係即係廢晒。
So David didn't struck down all his
但係
chariot
大衛咧就係
horses.
攻陷咗呢個所巴啦。
And then
但大衛
David
已經攻
defeated
陷了所
Soba.
巴。
除咗所巴咧，仲有係大馬色啦。
Apart from Soba,
除了
they
所巴還有大
also
馬色
defeated
大馬色人咧就
Damascus.
係幫助所巴，其實佢哋都係亞蘭人嚟嘅。
The people of
大馬色人就
Damascus
去幫助
helped
所巴，因為他
Soba.
們同樣都是
They
亞
are
蘭
also
人。
大衛咧就係
Arameans.
打埋呢個大馬色啊，
大衛就
David also
同樣地去
defeated
打大馬色
Damascus
就使佢哋歸服進貢啊。
就使
and
他
made
們
them
歸服
subject
進
to
貢
him and brought tribute.
大衛無論往哪裏去，
The
耶和華
second
都
part of
使
verse
他得
6,
勝
the
第六
Lord
節後
gave
面看見
David
大衛無論
victory
往哪裡
wherever
去
he
耶和華
went.
都使他得勝。
佢就奪咗呢個所巴王哈大謝神僕所立嘅金盾牌到耶路撒冷
At verse 7, David took the gold shields that belonged to the
他就奪
officers
了哈大
of
底謝的臣僕所拿的
Hadadezer
金
and
盾
brought
牌
them
到
to
耶路撒冷。
Jerusalem
又奪咗好多個銅啦。
and took a great quantity of
咁
bronze.
仲有一個嘅亞蘭王
And there is another Aramean king,
哈馬啦，
就是哈馬
Hama.
哈馬都係屬於亞蘭。
Hama also belonged to
即係今日嘅
Aram.
敍利亞。
亞蘭就是
Aram
敘利亞
refers to Syria
以
today,
色列嘅北邊
northern part of
以色列嘅北邊。
Israel,
東北邊啦，應該係咁。
or
應該說是
northeast
東北
part of
邊。
Israel.
咁所以喺東北邊嘅所巴、大馬色
So in the
哈馬咧
northeastern
都係
region,
順服
Soba,
係
Aramean,
所以東北邊的所巴、大馬
they
色還有
also
哈馬都
and
是
also
順服了
Hamas
大衛。
submitted to David.
咁哈馬王點樣順服咧？就係、佢原來哈馬咧就同呢一個嘅所巴咧係唔妥嘅，常常爭戰。
哈馬
So
呢就是常
Hama
常跟所
and
巴
Soba,
征戰他們不和
They always fight against
於
each
是
other.
大衛咧攻陷咗呢個所巴之後咧，哈馬就向大衛進攻啦。
所以
And
大衛
after
攻陷了
King David had
所巴之後
defeated
哈馬就向
Soba,
大衛來進
And
攻
this king also paid
這裡有一幅
tribute to
圖畫。
David.
就
There is a
係
picture
第
here.
10節、11節、12節所講嘅，
As
就是
in
第10
verse
節
10,
11
11
所說。
said,
佢征服列國，
他
So he
征服了列
conquered
國
the
西
nations,
邊啊、東邊啊
eastern
西邊、
Israel,
東邊
or western, or northern
北邊
Israel.
然之後就將佢哋入邊嘅進貢嘅品咧，就帶翻耶路撒冷。
然
David
後就把
brought
他們
back
每一邊進貢的品呢，就
all
帶
these
到耶路撒冷
tribute back to Jerusalem.
分別為聖獻給耶和華。
And
分別為聖
King
獻給
David
耶和華。
dedicated these articles to the Lord. Verse
為什麼要這
11.
麼做呢？
Why is he
因為
doing that?
無論大衛往哪裏去，神都使他
Because the
得勝
Lord
因
gave
為
David
大
victory
無論大衛往哪
wherever
裡
he
去
went.
神都使他得勝。
大衛嘅武功咁好，
大衛的
You
武
can
功
see
這麼好，
David's kung fu is so
神
great.
其實是神，
It's because of
讓
God.
佢得勝。
It's
是
God
神
who
讓
let
他得
him
勝
win over the wars.
是神
It's
使他
God
得
將
勝
who
勝
gave
利
victory
交俾佢
to
神將勝利
David.
交給他，
佢就係將各地所擄掠嘅翻嚟，就係獻
And
俾
the
神。
plunders he captured from different places, he dedicated
第
to
四
God.
節就是從亞蘭，
Verse 12.
第12節就是從亞蘭
頭先我所講嘅北邊啦。
So I
敘利亞嗰個
said
地方
in the
我剛
northern
所說的北
Israel,
邊敘利亞
Syria,
摩亞
Edom and Moab.
東邊咧，
Moab is from the east.
亞門亦都係東邊
Ammonites
啦
also
亞門亦係
eastern
東邊
Israel.
非利士就係西邊啦
Philistines, western side.
亞瑪力
Amalek
亦都係東邊啦
also
亞瑪力
in
也
the
是東
east.
邊。
所得來嘅以及
He also dedicated the plunder taken from Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Soba.
所得來的以及從所巴王利和的兒子哈大底謝所掠之物，都來歸給耶和華。
嗱呢度講咗西
Here it
邊
talk about
北邊
western
這
part,
裡講了西邊、
eastern,
東邊、北邊。
northern part of
列國
Israel.
都
All these
係
nations,
被佢征服咗，
being
並且嚟
all
進
these
貢
nations are
這些列國都
defeated
被
by
他征服，而
David,
且來
and
進
they
貢。
pay
佢哋所得
tribute
嘅物
to
咧全
David.
部係分別為聖啊，
也把
Then
他所
David
奪的物呢
dedicated the
全部分
plunder.
別為聖，
獻俾神。
獻給神。
然之後我哋睇第13節，
Then
然後
look
來
at
看第
verse
13
13.
在鹽谷擊殺
And
了
David
亞蘭18000
became
人
famous after
大衛
he
在鹽
returned
谷擊
from
殺了
striking
亞蘭
down
18000
18,000 of
呢度咧
Edomites in the
小字就
valley
話
of
話咗
sword.
以東喎。
那小字這
Here
邊
it
寫
says
錯作
Edom.
其實我會覺得以東比較係吻合啲嘅。
其實我覺得以東
The
比較穩
English
合
translation is
因為以東就係
Edomites. This is
南
more
邊啦。
appropriate.
就是南
Is in the
邊
north,
喺
is in the
以色列
southern
嘅南
part
邊
在以
of
色列的南
Israel.
邊，
所以呢度所講嘅係東南西北
So it's the
所以這裡
four
講所
corners
講的
of
是
the
東南
earth,
西
嘅
北，
列國咧，
and
都
all
係被佢征
nations
服咗
being
並且嚟
defeated
進貢
by
各個列國都被他
David,
征服，
and
而
they
且
pay
來進貢
tributes
並且
to
大衛咧
David.
又喺以東嗰個地方設下防營啦。
而
Verse
且大衛在
14,
以東那個地
David
方
put
設下防
garrisons
營，
throughout
最後一個
Edom.
總結就係第14節，
然後
And
最
this
後
is
一個
the
總結就是
conclusion
第
again.
大
14節
衛無論
The
往哪
Lord
裏去
gave
耶和華
David
都使他
victory
得勝
wherever
大
he
衛無論
went.
往哪裡去，耶和華都使他得勝。
呢度讓被擄嘅以色列人知道，
This is
這裡
to
讓被擄
let
的
the
以色列人知道，
Israelites who went into captivity and
也
to
讓
let
今天我
everyone
們所有人
know
知道
得勝在乎耶和
the
華，
battle
得
is
勝
the
在乎耶
Lord's.
和華，
唔計兵多
It's
馬多
not
不計
how
算
many
兵多馬
horses
多
or
面
chariots
對
you
好多
have.
嘅敵人，
所以面對
When
很
we
多
face
敵
many
人
enemies, we
我
should
我
not
們不需要
fear.
懼怕。
面對好大嘅壓力，
When we
面對很大的
face
壓
great
力，
我
pressure,
哋唔需要懼怕
we。should not fear.
只要我心中有神，
As long
只有
as I
心中
have
有
God
神。
in my heart,
我哋都能夠以弱制強。
我們都能夠
then
以
we
弱
can
制強
overcome,
以小
even
勝
though
多
we are the
其實
smaller
我哋睇
ones.
到以色列佢哋係咁樣打仗，
We can
其實
see
我們
how
看
the
見以色列是
Israelites
這樣
fight the
打仗。
battle
得
nowadays.
勝係神所俾。
So
得勝
it's
是
God
神
who gives
所
us
給的。
victory.
大衛每一次佢要出戰嘅時候，
Every
佢都問
time
神
when
大衛每次要
David,
出戰的
before
時候，他都
David
問
went,
神，
went out to fight a battle, he would inquire of God,
應該點辦？
Oh God, what
神
should I
應該怎
do?
麼做
我去呢個地方
Should I
可唔可以
go
我
to
去
that
這個地方
place?
可以嗎？
神話
God
可以
said
他說可
yes.
以。
我追亞瑪力人追唔追得上？
Should I pursue
亞瑪力人追
after
得
the
上嗎？
Amalekites?
追得上，
God said
追得
yes.
上，
Go.
去吧。
佢就
Then he
他就
went.
去，
佢處處求問神。
他處處求
Then
問神。
David inquired of God in all
所以
things.
在這裡看
That's
見
how
他得勝。
David
無論
won
他
all
往
this
哪裡
victory.
去，
It is God.
使他得勝。
神
The
都使
Lord
他
gave
得勝。
David victory wherever he went.
神應許約書亞咁，
This is
這
God's
是神
promise
應
to
許約書亞
Joshua.
的。
你進入迦南
You enter into the land of
有
Canaan.
好多嘅敵人，好多嘅
You will
敵人
face a
有很
lot
多
of
的敵人，
giants
很
and
多的巨人。
enemies
從南邊去到北邊，
from
南
south
到
to
北邊。
north.
你腳掌所踏之地，我都賜俾你。
I
你
will
腳
give
掌所
you
踏之地，
all
我都
these
賜給你。
territories.
有一個人
沒有一個
能夠喺
人
你面前
No one can
可以
stand
在你面
before
前站
you.
立。
好多嘅城池，
很多
There
的
are
你所建
many
我都賜俾你。
There are many cities, even though it's not built by you, I will give them to you. It's all from God's blessing.
今日大衛咧去我記載佢嘅武功嘅總結嘅時候，其實咧佢都講到呢個係佢嘅祝福嚟嘅。
Now we can
記載大衛嘅
see
武功，
the
其實都是講到是
conclusion
他
talk
的祝
about
福。
David's
都
power
係神嘅
and
賞
kung
賜
fu
一切
is
都是神
all
的賞賜。
the reward and the promise of God. It's the blessing.
呢樣嘢咧，我希望深深打入我哋嘅心。
I
我
hope
希望這
you
樣
can
呢能夠深深打
engrave
入我
this
心
into
中。
your heart.
今日我哋唔覺得係神嘅祝福。
Today, we might not feel that it is God's
未
blessing.
得嘅時候咧，就覺得係神嘅祝福啊！你祝福我啦。
So before
沒有
we
得到
receive
這個
those
是神的
things,
祝福，
we say,
祝
Oh
福我。
God,
得
come
咗之後
and
咧
bless
就
me.
覺得係自己賺
And
返。
after we
得到之後就
receive
覺得
those
是自己
things,
賺
we
回來
think
的。
it is me who earned these things.
為什麼會得到這些呢？
我叻就係
Oh,
我
I'm very smart
講啊
人脈夠廣。
because I have people's
我捉到嗰個
relationship.
機會啦，
我
I
抓到
grab
那個
hold
機
of that
會了，
過
opportunity.
咗就唔得㗎啦。
過了就不行了。
That's why
我哋
I'm
往自己嘅面
victorious.
上係咁貼金。
我們就
And
往
we
自己
are
的臉
just
上
giving
貼
all
金
these credits to ourselves.
我們虧缺了神
And
的
we
榮
didn't
耀，
give glory to God.
犀利、
We think we are so powerful.
自大。
We are so prideful, being self-righteous,
自
arrogant,
吹自擂啦，
还有自
and we
吹
boast
自
about
擂
ourselves.
呢個係我哋。
This is us.
但係當咁嘅時候咧，
But when we
当这
do
样的时
these,
候，
你好容易走向失
it's
敗。
easy for us to move
但
to
佢嘅國度
failure.
永遠立定。
所以大衛的国度要
That's
永远
why
立定，
we say David's
一定要有这
kingdom,
个心态。
if needs to be established forever,
一切
we
都
must
是神的
have
祝福
the heart of
我哋
David.
要謙卑落
Everything is from
我
God.
們謙卑。
We must humble ourselves.
相信神，
Believe in God.
唔係話自己唔努力啊。
It's not that we
不是說自己
don't
不
work
努力
hard,
下邊我哋會講，
下面
we
我會
will
說
continue to
但係我哋要知道一切都係神嘅。
say
但我們要知道一切都是神的祝
it's
福。
all the blessings from God.
我哋能夠咁樣相信咧，
If we
我
can
們能夠
believe
這樣
it this
相信
way,
面對今日我哋面對更大嘅壓力。
今天我們
today
面
we
對更大的
face
壓力
intensive pressure.
好黑暗嘅前邊，
被擄
So
的以色
just
列人
like
面
the
對很黑暗的
Israelites
前
in
面，
captivity, they
佢
face
哋
a
都
lot
有
of
信心
darkness.
有盼望走落去。
他們都有信
But
心
they
有
must
盼
have
望走
faith
下
and
去
hope to
因
move
因為
forward
神應許
because
了
this is God's promise,
神
and
就
He
要成
will,
就，
all His promises will
一定
surely
會
come
成
to
就。
pass.
得勝係神嘅賞賜。
得勝是
Victory
神
is
的
the
賞
reward
賜
from God.
以色列人話復國能夠復國與否係神嘅祝福嚟。
So to the
以色列人說，能否
Israelites,
復
whether
國是
they
神的
can
祝福。
revive the nation is about the blessing from God. God said yes, they will be revived.
今
It's the
天我們
same
也
for
也
us
是一樣
today.
今日我都係啊，
Same
今天
for
我也
me.
是，
神將我帶咗
God
翻
brought
嚟，
me back to
神把
Hong
我帶
Kong.
回香港，
我就打死都唔走。
Then I will never leave this place.
97之前
Before 1997,
97之前我走過，
I left Hong
我
Kong.
後悔。
我
I
後悔
repented. I relented.
當神再次將我帶翻嚟嘅
When
時候，
God brought
當
me
時再
back
次把我帶
again,
回來的時候，
我一落飛機，
first time when I got off the
一進入
plane,
酒店
一
I
進
entered
酒
into
店
the
我
hotel.
就跪低，
I
我就
knelt
跪
down
下，
同土地立約，
and established the covenant with the
香
land,
港嘅土地。
the
香
Hong
港的
Kong
土
land.
地。
97之前我唔成熟
Before
我恐懼
97,
97之前
I
我不
was
成熟，我
immature.
恐
I
懼
was fearful.
我走咗離開呢個地
I left
我走
this
我走了，
place.
離開這個地方。
今日神帶我翻
But
嚟，
today, God brought me
神帶我回來。
back.
我委身你，
I
我
will
委身於你，
submit to God.
我委身
I
於
commit
你，
myself to
我
you.
都唔會再走。
無論
No
怎麼
matter
樣，我
what,
都不
I
會
will
再
not
走。
leave this place.
我要珍惜
I will
你，
cherish you.
我要建立你。
I will build you up. This is
我們是
from
綁
what
在一
God
起。
said to Pastor Joshua.
以至今日面對好大嘅壓力，
以致今天
Even
面對很大的
today, I
壓力
face a lot of
我仍
pressure.
然咁樣站立。
I still
仍然這樣
stand
站立。
by
土
God.
地好愛我哋，
The
土地
land
很愛
loves
我們。
us.
土地為我哋
The
好，
land
土地
works
為
for
我們
us
效力，
因為我委身於佢，
because I
因為我
commit
身於他，
myself to the
我委
land
身
of
於
Hong
神
Kong.
帶領我
I
翻嚟。
commit to
我
God
委
who
身
brought
於
me
神
back.
帶領我回來。
我同神講，我同土地
I
講
said
我
to
唔會
God,
走
I said
我
to
跟
the
神說，我跟
land,
土地說，
I
我不
will
會
not
走。
leave again.
我知道呢個地方係神俾我嘅
I
祝福
know this
知道這個地
place
方是
is
神
the
給我的祝
blessing
福。
from God for me.
我翻返嚟。
I came
我
back.
回來。
今日喺香港動盪嘅時候，
Today, while
今天
Hong
在香
Kong
港
is
動盪
still
的時刻，
shaking,
我仍然站，
I still
我仍
stand
然
still,
站立，
相信神嘅祝福，
believe in
相
God's
信神的
promise,
相信神嘅應許，
相信神
in
的
His
應許，
blessings.
帶我翻嚟嘅時候同我所講嘅
I
話，
相信
believe
神帶
the
我回來的
words
時候對我所說的話。
God spoke to me when He brought me back.
以至今日面對好大壓力嘅時候，
Even though
以致
I'm
今天面
facing
對
a
很
lot
大
of
的壓力的時
pressure,
我哋仍然屹立，
候，
we
我
still
們仍然屹
stand,
立，
站
still
喺神嘅話語當中。
站在神的
standing
話
on the
語當
words of
中。
God.
呢個我相信神嘅應
I
許。
believe in God's
這個是因為我相
promise.
信神的應許。
弟兄姊妹，我哋都係要咁樣相信神嘅話。
Brothers
弟
and
兄姐妹，我們都
sisters,
要這樣來
we
相信
must
神的
believe
話
in the words of
神
God.
祝福我哋，
神
God
祝福我
bless
們，
us,
我哋就可以面對更大嘅難關。
and we
我哋
can
仍
face
然有
even
盼望
greater
我們就可以面
difficulties
對更
ahead.
大的難關，我們仍然有
We
盼
still
望。
have hope
因為無論我往哪裏去，神都要讓我得勝。
因為不論我
because
往哪
God
裏
will
去，神
give
都要
me
我得勝。
victory
神帶我
wherever
返
I
嚟
go.
神會讓我喺呢個地方得
God
勝。
brought me
神帶我
back.
回來，他會在
He
讓
will
我在這個
surely
地方
give
得勝。
victory to me in this place.
這裡講到神
He's
的
talked
祝福
about the
是神的
blessings
祝
of
福那
God.
部
應該
分。
係第15到18節咧，
接下來
Verse
15到
係
15
講到
18節呢，
人嘅責任啦。
是講到人的責
18 is
任，
talk about the
講到人
responsibility of
性的那
man.
一方面。
大衛嘅文字係點咧？
What
大衛的
about
名
the
字是怎麼
writings
樣
of
呢？
David,
字
the words of David?
佢係盡佢人嘅責任，
So he fulfilled
佢
his
做安排佢
responsibility
治理
as a
佢嘅
man.
百姓
他做安
So
排
he
去治理他的
arranged
百
and to
姓。
甚至
administer
就話
his
大衛
people.
作以色列眾人的王，又
Verse
向
15,
眾民
David
秉
reigned
公
over
行義
all
第15
Israel,
节，大
doing
卫
what
做
was
以色
just
列
and
众人
right
的
for
王，又向众民秉公行義。
我嘗試係直譯呢一句話咧。
So I
我嘗
try
試
to
直譯這句話。
translate these
大
words.
衛登基作以色列，即係全以色列的王。
David
大衛
reigned
登
as
基做
king
全以色列的王。
over all
呢個作王
Israel.
其實係登上佢嘅寶座，
這個
So
作王其實
reign
是登上他的寶
呢
座
is
個
to
寶
rise
座
up
係治理住
and sit on his throne.
所有嘅以色列民。
這個
So
寶座
here,
是治理所
this
有的
throne,
以色列民。
He on this throne he reigned over all
這
Israel.
裡有一個 all
即
Israel
係全以色列
So all the
全
people of
以色列
Israel.
嘅寶座。
的寶
This
座
is the throne of David. He sat on
其
it.
實呢度係神嘅恩典嚟嘅喎，
This
這
is the
就是
grace
神
of
的恩
God.
典這
係
句話
總結前邊。
是總結了
Concluding the
前面
previous
以色列嘅
chapters.
他作為以色
As
列
the
的
king
王
of
呢個寶座係神嘅
Israel.
揀選嚟㗎。
It is
登上
God
這
who
個
has
寶座是神
chosen
的揀
him
選
同埋佢前
to
邊
sit
嗰
on
個
this
十字
throne.
能夠完全嘅得勝係神嘅祝福嚟㗎。
還有前
And
面一到
also from
十字
verse 1 to
他可以完全的得勝是
14,
神的祝福。
He's,
佢
he
嘅全部都要
is
成就㗎。
神應許
victorious.
他的全部都要
This
成
is
就
the promise of
呢句話
God
咧過
which
渡
has come
總
to
結上面
pass.
神聖嗰一部分啊，
這句話
So
總
these
結了
words
上面神聖的
concluded
即係
部分。
神嘅作為
The
嗰一部
promise
分
of
就是
God,
神的作
the
為的那
work
一部
of
分。
但
God.
係下一句咧，
但下
So
一
the
句呢，
next
又向眾民秉
sentence,
行公義。
又向眾民
doing
秉
what
公
was
行義
just and right for his
仲有
people.
大衛呢個字又出現㗎。
Then the
大
original
衛
text,
登
it says,
全國以色列嘅王位，
只是原文
David
當中是大衛登以色
reigned
列全以
over
色列
all
國的
Israel.
王位。
下邊咧係
And then we
大
continue
衛
to say,
向全民行
And then
judgment and
David
righteousness
was
然後下面
doing
就是大衛向
what is
全民
just
行
and right for all
judgment
his people.
and
and
righteousness，
righteousness，
His
就係
judgment and
判斷
righteousness.
就是判
So
斷。
his judgment
即係佢同埋係公義。
and also his
佢所
righteous.
行嘅係公義嘅，
Whatever he did is righteous.
向住全民係行公義。
He did
向着
righteous
全民是
things
行
towards
公
all
義
his
佢去
people.
判斷全民啊，
And he
而且
also
去判
judged
斷
all
全
his
民。
people.
有全民係有咩爭訟啊咩咩，佢都去做一個嘅判斷。
So whenever there are any arguments, any cases, he will make
並且是一
the
個公義的
righteous
判斷
judgment.
公義咧行喺全國，
是將公
And
義
he's
行
being
在全
righteous
國。
all over the
就
nation.
係 all the people，
It's for
就是
all the
all the
就
people.
係出現 all 呢個字，
又
The
出
word
現
all
這個
appear.
字
即係話佢係向全民咧，佢係去執行呢一個公
To
平公義
all the
就是他向
people, he
全民去
execute
實
his
行公平
righteous
公義。
佢嘅
judgment.
judgment 咧就要讓整個國家有公義。
His
他的
judgment is
就
to
是讓全
lead
國有
the
公義。
whole nation having
佢點樣
righteousness.
做咧？
How
他
did he
怎麼樣
do?
做呢？
呢個人嘅呢一部分，
So this is
就
the
是
part
人
on
的這一
men.
部分。
神嘅一部分係神嘅祝福
The part
但
on
係
God
人
is
要盡
God's
神嘅責任
blessing.
神的
And
部
for
分
the
就是
part
神
of
的
man,
祝福，
man
那
has
人
to
這邊就要盡自
fulfill
己的責
係
任。
神
the
揀選佢坐呢個
responsibility,
位
the duty.
是神揀選他
It's
的
God
位
who
置
has chosen him to
冇
sit
神
on this
佢
throne.
坐唔上去
Without
沒有
God's
神的
help,
揀
he
選
won't
他
be
否則他
able
坐不上
to
去
reign as
就算
king.
掃羅死咗，佢都坐唔上
Even
去
就算
Saul
掃羅死了
died,
他
he
也坐不
couldn't
上去。
get on his
我
throne.
們前面有
We
提過
mentioned this before.
現在佢坐得上
Now
去啦
he's on
現
his
在他已經坐
throne.
上去
並且
了，
讓佢大大得勝
And
啦
God
佢
let
去到邊度都
him
而且讓他
be
到哪裡都大大得
victorious
勝。
wherever he
呢
went.
個係神嘅。
This is God's
作為
work.
人咧，人都要
But
做
as for
但
men, we
人
have
也
to
要做。
fulfill our
佢
own
要向
duty.
全民秉公行義。
他
He
要
has
向
to
全民秉
Do
公
what was
行義。
just and right for all his
公義
people.
喺佢國家入邊執行
And
他要讓
he has
公
to
義在他的
execute
國家裡
righteous
面執行。
judgment
人
in
與
his
人之間
nation.
之間
要做一個正確嘅判斷，
So he has to do this righteous judgment between
要
men.
處理人嘅問
He
題。
has to deal with men's problem.
喺處理當中咧，要讓神嘅公義嚟，
He has to let the righteousness of God come upon
大
them.
家都要跟從神嘅話，
Everyone has to follow God's
都要
words.
守神嘅誡命，
Everyone has to keep God's command
讓神嘅心意臨到全
and let the
讓
heart of
神的
God
心意臨
come
到
upon
全
the
國的
whole
百姓。
nation and all
他怎麼
people.
樣做呢？
What did he do?
就記載佢嘅係內閣官員啦。
And he
就記
recorded
載他的內
his
閣官員。
對我哋
officials.
教會嚟講咧，就係我哋嘅
To our church,
核心同工察
it
員
is
工啊
our
那對我們
curator
教會來說
staff,
就是
the
我們的
core
核心同工
committee
策長
members.
同工。
對大衛嚟講，呢
To
啲就係
David.
佢嘅內部高層嘅官員。
It
那對
is
大衛來說，就
the
是他內部的高
the
層的官
executive
員。
level.
洗魯雅嘅兒子約押
his
做元帥
committee members,
洗魯雅的兒子
Joab,
約押做元帥，
son of
仲有
Suruai,
約沙法做史官，
Jehoshaphat as the recorder,
撒督同埋
Zadok
阿希米勒作祭司，
and
撒督
Ahimelech
跟
as
亞希米勒做
priests,
祭司，
西萊雅作書記，
Sariah as secretary,
耶何耶大嘅
Benaiah,
兒子比拿雅統合基提
son of
基利提人和比利提
Jehoiada,
人
was over the
約和約大的兒
Kerethites
子
and
比拿雅
Pelethites.
統轄基利提人和比利提人。
提一提咧，基利提人、比利提人咧，
Talk
都係
about
加
the
特人。
Kerethites
Now,
and
我
Pelethites.
們提一提
They
是基利
are
提
the
人跟比利提
Gadites.
人都
They
是
are
從
from
迦特來
Gad.
的，
即係啲巨人，
They are the
是一個
giants,
巨人，
即係啲好犀利嘅人。
very
很厲害的
powerful.
人。
啊，仲有大衛眾子都
Also,
作領袖。
David's
還有大衛的
sons
眾
were
子都做
priests.
領袖。
領袖呢個字係同祭司亞希米勒咧，撒督作祭司個祭司係同一個字嚟嘅。
這個領
So
袖
in the
呢
Chinese
是跟
translation, it
撒
said
督和
leader, but
亞希米
here
勒
is
做
the
祭司的祭
priest.
司是同一個字
所以。話大衛的眾子都作祭司。
Here it says
所以大衛的
David's
眾子
sons were
都做祭
priests.
哇！呢度有啲嘅混亂啊！
哦這裡
It
有一些
seems
的
a bit
混亂。
但係喺咁短兩次
confusing
嘅
to
經
you.
文入邊，同樣出現祭司呢個字。
But
但這
within
麼短
these
兩節的經
two
文裡面，同樣出現祭
verses,
司這
the
個字。
word
所以
priest
和合本
appear
為
two
咗
times.
免我哋嘅混亂咧，就將佢翻為領袖。
So
所以
in
和
the
合本怕我
Chinese
們混淆了，所以
NIV
就把它
version,
翻成領
the
袖。
last
原
word
文係祭
priest
司。
其實原
is
文是祭
translated as
司，
leader, but the original text is priest.
那究竟怎麼樣呢？
嗱，呢個真理係
So there is
這裡有真
truth
理
in
在裡
it.
面。
睇到咧，佢嘅安排係咁嘅。
We can see this is
安排是
David's
這樣。
其
arrangement.
實係一對一對。
So it's,
其實是
it
一
goes
對
in
一對
pair.
有三對 A、B、C。
There are
三對
three
有
pairs here,
A,
A,
B,
B,
大衛
C.
嘅眾子咧記載咗6個人，
Apart
除了
from
大衛的
David's
眾子，
sons,
記載
they
了
recorded
6個人。
6 people.
佢嘅鋪排係咁嘅。
So the
他的鋪排
arrangement
是
is
這樣。
like this.
元帥約押，
So
元帥
Joab,
約
the
押
commander,
跟住咧係約沙法係呢一個嘅史官。
Jehoshaphat,
約沙法
is
是
the
史官
recorder.
第二，
第
the
三咧
second,
係
the first is
Zadok.
Joab.
第
The
三是
third
撒督
is
係
Zadok.
祭司，
He's the
是祭司。
priest.
第四
The fourth,
第四，
係亞希米勒，
Ahimelech,
又係祭司喎。
is also
亞希米
the
勒又是
priest.
祭司。
但係你睇到兩個祭司喎。
Can you see there are 2
喺中間
priests in
有
the
兩個
middle?
祭司在中間。
跟住呢度係 A、B、C 啊。
Like this is A, B, C.
跟住C 有 C 派啦，C
And
派
there
就
is
即
C
係
派
撒督同埋亞希米勒
Zadok
係咪？
C 有
and
C 派
Ahimelech
撒督跟
希望你
亞希米勒
知我講緊乜嘢啦。
希望你知道
因為我
我在講什麼。
已經好急啦，時間
Because of the
已經
limited
時間
time,
已經
I'm in a
到了。
hurry.
下邊再落嚟咧，就係呢一個嘅西萊雅做書記啊。
那接下來西萊
And
雅
then
做
we
書記。
have
書記其實
Sariah.
係 B 派嚟嘅，
Sariah should be
西萊
B
雅書記
派.
是 B 派，
同史官相對啊。
So
跟
is in the
史
same
官相
rank
對。
呢
as
個都係
the
文官入
recorder.
邊嘅頭嚟嘅。
這都是
Is the
民
head
官
of
裡面
the
的一
recorder.
頭。
一個係書記，一個係史
One
官，
is the
一個是書記，
recorder,
一個
one
是
is
史官。
一
secretary.
個係要記載歷史喎。
So they have to
記載
record
歷史。
其實
histories.
神嘅教訓係乜嘢
What
咧？
is
其實神的
God's
教訓是
lesson
什麼呢？
to
書記
us?
就係現在我哋要點樣執行咧？
So
書
how
記
should
就是
the
現在我們要
recorder
怎麼樣執
execute
行
his
睇
work?
到呢兩個嘅文官
Can you see
可以
these
看見這
two
兩個民官
跟住咧
like
又係有
scribes?
呢個係統領基拿提人嘅係比拿
And also
雅啦
Benaiah
然後就有統領基利
take
提人、比利提人
ruling
有
over
同元帥
Kerethites
相
and
對喎。
還有
Pelethites.
跟元帥相對
元，帥又統領大軍，
And it's
元
like
帥
the
是統領大
same
軍，
但係比拿
ranking
雅咧
as the
統領
commander
最犀利嗰
Joab.
啲人。
那比拿雅統領
But
最厲害的
Benaiah
人
has
睇唔睇
been
到啊？
ruling
看得到
over the
嗎？
powerful
一對對
ones.
嘅喎。
是一對一
So
對
it's
的，
they go in
成為一隊
pairs.
這裡成為一對。
然之後呢6個咧，
And there's
然後這
6
6個人
men.
中間最重要嘅就係
The middle one is
撒
most
祭司
important.
同埋
It's Zadok,
比亞他啦。
那中間最重要的就是
亞希米勒
Ahimelech,
撒督還有亞希米勒，
and
是
Zadok.
不是？
呢個係祭司喎。
They are the
這是祭
priests.
司
大衛嘅眾子有作祭
And
司。
also
然後
David's
大衛的
sons
眾子
were
都做祭
priests.
司
呢度唔係話大衛嘅眾子喺嗰燒香啊。
It's
做啲
not
咩
talking
唔係
about
不是說大衛
David's
的眾子在那邊
sons
燒香做些
burning
什麼，
而係
incense.
講大衛嘅眾子咧，佢要統領祭司。
Talking
而
about
是大衛的
David's
眾子要
sons.
統領
They
祭司
rule over
多個
as
仔，
他
priests.
這麼多兒子，
He has so
大衛
many
嘅
sons.
全家
That is the whole
大衛的
house of
全家
David.
都係一齊幫助祭司，
They
都是一起
helped
幫
the
助
帶領
priests,
祭司，
leading the
祭
priests,
司有好密切嘅關
and
係。
have
跟
close
祭司有很密切的
relationship with the
關係。
大
priests.
衛嘅眾子大衛家
David's sons and
就
the
是
whole
大衛
house of
眾子和
David,
他大衛的家都
they
在服
were
侍神。
serving God.
我睇到人嘅責任係咩
So
咧？
we can
所以這裡
see
我們
what
看
is
見
man's
大衛做
duty.
什麼呢？大衛要做
What
的
is David
佢
doing?
安排晒所有嘅
Is
官
to
他安排了
arrange
所有
all
的
these
官員，
做咗該
officials,
做了該
the
做的事
officers.
最重
They
要
do
嘅
what
係
they
咩
裡面最重要
arrange them to do what should be done. The most important is to
服侍
serve
神
God.
撒督、
Zadok,
都
阿希米，
Ahimelech,
亞希米勒，
係啊，同埋佢嘅
and
眾
also
子
David's sons.
其實呢最重要，
They are
這些人
most
最重要
important
因為一切都係神嘅祝福。
because it's
因為一切
all
都是
about
神的
God's
祝福。
佢哋
blessing.
要帶領全國歸
They
向
have to
他們要帶
bring
領
the
全
whole
國歸向
nation
神。
祭
turn
司
to God.
做咗啦，
祭司做
So the
了，
priest had
大
done it.
衛嘅眾子都要
And
做。
also
大衛的
David's
眾子
sons
都
has
要
to
做
do
心
this.
最重要嘅就係帶領大
What
家歸
is
向
most important in their heart is to bring all people
有
turn to
兩個嘅
God.
史官，
有兩
There
個
are
史官
two，scribes.
一個要
One is a
講神嘅
recorder,
嘢，
一個要講神
and
的事，
神俾我有咩教訓？
神
he-
給我們有什麼
and
教訓？
secretary.
應該點樣做？
一個
One
是
is
現
to
實應該怎麼
proclaim
樣
God's
做？
words.
兩個嘅
What are the
軍事嘅
lessons
統領
given to us
有
by
兩個
God?
軍事
And
的統領，
一個係做大軍，
one
一個是
is
做
like
大
the
軍，
commander
一個係
of the army.
特種，
一個是特種，
即係呢個係比拿雅，
And
Benaiah.
Benaiah.
佢嘅特種部隊啊，
So he's a powerful man,
是神所賞
mighty
賜的。
man given by God.
提醒自己。
He has to, they have to remind
人要
themselves.
盡我哋嘅責任
As men, we have to fulfill our duty.
呢個責任入邊，除咗治理百姓、秉公行義，
So there's duty or responsibility apart from ministering
一切都
over the
要
people
事
and
實
doing
歸
what's
向
just and
其實
right.
其他的一切都
Then
是
they
要
have
服
to
侍神
serve
歸向
God,
神
turn
大
to
衛嘅
God.
眾子要做呢樣。
David's sons had to do this.
將來你眾子當中一個做王嘅時候，
So
眾子當中
among the
其中一個
sons, when
做王
one of
的時
them
候
rose up as
王都要
king,
服侍神歸向
this king
王
has to
一樣
serve
服侍神
God
歸
and
向
turn to
神
God.
要常常帶住人嚟到神
The
面前。
king
要
has to
常常
bring
帶着人來
people
到神
before
面
God.
前。
所以呢度講佢哋係作祭司。
So
所以
here
這裡講他們是做
it
祭
says
司，
they are the priests.
呢個撒督佢哋所做嘅
It's not to
其實不是
repeat
重複
what
撒督所
Zadok
做的，
is
而係
doing.
表示大衛家嘅決
It's
心。
to
而是表示大衛家的決
express the
心。
determination of the house of
弟兄
David.
姐妹
今日
Brothers
我哋
and
面對
sisters,
艱難，
Today we are
面對艱
facing
難，
all these difficulties. What should we do?
其實你要睇神。
You have
其實
to
你要
look
看
upon
神。
God.
大衛嘅眼目望住神，
David's
大衛的
eyes
目
fixed
望
on
着神。
佢嘅
God.
眾子要望住神。
His
他的眾子
sons
要望着
also
神，
had to look upon God,
敬畏
fulfill
神
their responsibility,
服侍神，
serve
服侍
God.
神先係最 critical 嘅 factor。
God is the
神
most
神才是
critical
最
factor.
的
但係當然
factor
我哋要盡我哋嘅
Of
責任
course, we have
當
to
然我們要
fulfill
盡
our
我們的責任，
responsibility
秉公
to administer the
治理百姓，
people,
秉
doing
公
what's
行義，
just and right. May God
求主
help
幫助
us.
我們